So we get into chapter 11, which is Purusha and Prakriti, soul and nature, which is
कार्यकरण कर्तृत्वे हेतुः प्रकृतिरुच्यते पुरुषः सुख दुःखानां भोक्तृत्वे हेतुरुच्यते.
Prakriti creates the notion of doership. Kartrutve hetuhu prakritihi uchyate. And the karmic chain of cause and effect, karya karana. Purusha is the subjective experiencer. Bhoktritve hetuhu purusha uchyate. Of all kinds of pleasures and pains. Sukha dukkhana. So we're trying to understand, and this is a very unique contribution coming originally from Sankhya Yoga, Indian tradition. Gunas are playing, but who's experiencing? Okay, so ego is also the creation of Prakriti, but deep inside there must be who do you think is the ultimate experiencer? Who's experiencing? Soul. Brahman is got many meanings. One is everything. So everything is experiencing is also not wrong. So all answers are partly correct. Yes? Who is experiencing? Purusha. Who is that Purusha? It's a person. Yes? Dehi. Well, let's see. So let's read. All work and experience of life, according to the Gita, is a transaction between soul, Purusha, and nature, Prakriti. As mentioned earlier, the nature that binds a soul is a lower nature, apara Prakriti, creating the delusion of doership through the ahankara and the play of the three gunas. The energy source for all the happenings in Prakriti is, however, borrowed from the Purusha, which, although independent and inactive, tends to get identified with Prakriti and trapped by it. These are very subtle concepts, but by the time we finish today, I hope you will get the grasp of it. Prakriti needs energy. That source of energy comes from Purusha. The battery to run any device originally comes from a divine source, from the soul, from Purusha. This seemingly dynamic aspect of Purusha moves along with Prakriti, apparently sanctioning all her movements. It's kind of like you have a prime minister or a head of state who's kind of saying yes to every paper that comes for signature. You understand? So you're, what's it called? Remote controlled. That's often the default. We are like that, no? Most of the things we do in the hostel, we are kind of remote controlled. Said, take this, do that. Don't attend this guy's class, it's not good. It's go for pay package. We are kind of also remote controlled, right? We are kind of brainwashed by the prevailing gunas to do what you want. But you have a choice. You can say no. Purusha can say no, but Purusha often does not. Purusha just plays along, moves along. And that aspect of Purusha is called Kshara Purusha. We'll come to that. Both Purusha and Prakriti function not only at the individual level, multiple souls and the respective natures, but also at the universal level, the collective and the transcendental level beyond manifestation. It is the soul, Purusha, that enjoys the creation and action of Prakriti. However, this is a limited and mixed enjoyment. That's what's referred to here as bhoktritva. When the action is done by the lower nature, we want this enjoyment to be in the form of pleasures, sukha, of various kinds, tamasic, rajasic or sattvic, depending on the circumstances and our preferences. These pleasures are transient, and it is the very nature of Prakriti to bring in a tidal action with these pleasures giving way to their opposite. These are pains as a consequence of the karmic chain of cause and effect causing suffering, dukkha. So, kartritve, prakriti, purusha, bhoktritva. These are, so prakriti creates a notion of doership, but the ultimate source of enjoyment is attributed to purusha. Next topic, kshara purusha and akshara purusha. The term bhoga refers to experience of any kind, pleasure or pain or indifference. The experiencer here is kshara purusha, typically reflected in lower nature by tamasic, rajasic and sattvic forms of ahankara. In our habitual object-centered awareness, the kshara purusha in us gets lost in the experience, not conscious of its sublime and divine reality. We are fully caught in the enacted dramas, tossed and turned by the vicissitudes of life. It is only by stepping back into pure awareness that we discover our true self, free and unaffected by all these dramas, in much the same way as a mirror is least affected by the passing images reflected on it, be they good or bad, pretty or ugly. There is an inherent peace and quiet joy that can be experienced when we are centered in true self. In rare moments of objectless awareness, we discover the motionless, undying and unbounded self in us, the akshara purusha. So you have to step back from Prakriti far enough to discover that aspect of your true self which is vast, which is boundaryless, which is completely unaffected by whatever happens in Prakriti, which is akshara, immutable. Next page. It is possible to enter into this state of unconditioned peace, fully awake and conscious in deep meditation called samadhi in Raja Yoga. However, it is not usually possible to abide in this state for long, even if we wish to. So we soon return to the ordinary world of external experience. The discovery of Akshara Purusha and our ability to access it will definitely change our perspective and attitude towards living. It is even possible, as happened to many sages leading solitary lives in their caves in India, that one might not welcome returning to the world of ordinary experience, which is so often perceived as dukkha. We know that the Gita does not advocate outer renunciation motivated by escapism from the challenges and responsibilities of life. It clearly emphasizes that inaction prompted by such escapism is also not possible as long as the purpose for which the embodiment has occurred is not fulfilled. So usually if you kind of get into Akshara Purusha, meditative absorption, and the bliss of it, you don't want to come back to the messy world, right? And that's why many people kind of reject the world. The concept of sannyasa was that, outer renunciation. But the Gita does not, in general, recommend it. That's the uniqueness of the Gita. Exceptions are always there. Say, you are not born to escape the world. You were born for a particular purpose, to celebrate life. Nevertheless, the same Gita points to the importance of attaining freedom from bondage to apara prakriti and discovering Akshara Purusha. This discovery of Akshara Purusha is advocated while one is living an active life and not just at the time of the physical body's death. Is there then a third option of enlightened living, a third status of Purusha other than Kshara and Akshara, pointing to a supreme way of living a life of fulfillment? So this is a unique contribution of the Gita. There is Kshara and there is Akshara, and the choice between them is stark. Is there a third way of living? And the Gita says yes. Yes, says the divine teacher. It is on this supreme truth that the message of the Gita with regard to spirituality at work is fundamentally rooted. It is then that the Gita's yoga becomes complete. This third and supreme status of the Purusha is the Uttama, defined in verse 15.17. So you have Kshara, Akshara, Uttama. Uttama Purusha, another way of saying it is Purushottama. Purushottama. It is this status of the Supreme Divine called Purushottama or Ishvara Shakti as mentioned earlier. It includes and transcends both the Kshara and the Akshara. So what's the meaning, what's the difference in saying include and transcend and just transcend? A very important point. When you transcend a state, it means you've gone beyond. And often when you go to the next stage, you deny the first stage. Often we do that. Say, no, that's not a good way of living. But when you include and transcend, you don't deny it. You accept that it's actually the means to get to the higher stage. And you also have compassion for those who are in that stage. And you are never in denial. That's a very important aspect. So, true evolution is one in which you transcend every stage, go to a higher stage, but you include the previous stage in your current stage. It's like you learn more, but you don't forget what you learned earlier. And you can help others in that stage of learning. Very important. It is the all-inclusive, all-pervading, omnipotent, omnipresent and omniscient Brahman, the aspect of the Supreme Divine which engages in action and is subject to mutation, but is also self-aware of its status as immutable Akshara, is the higher nature, Para Prakriti or Shakti, who is inseparable from the Supreme Lord she serves, Ishvara. So the nature that we normally know of is the play of the three gunas. But there's another nature, a secret nature, a higher nature, Para Prakriti or Shakti, which is the counterpart of Purushottama. So let's understand that. So basically you have these divisions of Purusha and Prakriti, soul and nature. The default is Kshara Purusha, which supports active engagement with the world and which is personal in nature. And its counterpart is Apara Prakriti or lower nature, which is bound by the play of the three gunas. For most of us, this is the world that we know. I am separate from the world, right? And I know, especially after studying the Gita, that maybe there's a play of three gunas happening, but that's all I know. But there is a status that you can access in meditation, and that is Akshara Purusha, where I have a complete disengagement with the world. This is dynamic, this is completely inactive, and the best part is there is no personal self, it's impersonal. And it's close to the concept of shunyata which the Buddhists have. You know, this is nirvana, absolute freedom from any experience. And now we have something called Uttama Purusha, Purushottama, which transcends and includes both these states. So this is supreme, this contains both the personal and the impersonal, and at its source it's supremely divine. This is also called Ishvara. And the counterpart of this is Para Prakriti or Para Shakti, higher nature. So this is lower nature, this is higher nature. We can occasionally glimpse this, but it's possible to abide in this. And that's a completely different way. But we have to find a way here. And at least let's tentatively accept that such a state, such a possibility also exists, where you kind of live in the world, but you're not of the world, as is said in the Bible. Right? You get, so there are three statuses of Purusha: Kshara, mutable; Akshara, immutable, imperishable; Uttama, transcends and includes both. This is the Supreme Divine. And there are two statuses of Prakriti: Apara Prakriti, which is bound by the three gunas, Guna Guneshu Vartanta. And this is Ananta Guna. It's boundless. Anything is possible. But whatever happens here is truly divine. Whereas this is Nirguna. You understand? There's nothing happening here. Is it clear? Well, more or less. Next topic is, by the way, apara prakriti is a derivative of para prakriti. So those who are abiding here can see it always operating even hidden here. So this is the ultimate derivative. The Supreme Divine Purushottama or Ishvara Shakti.
उपद्रष्टानुमन्ता च भर्ता भोक्ता महेश्वरः परमात्मेति चाप्युक्तो देहेऽस्मिन् पुरुषः परः.
It's a very beautiful verse. Witness, consenter, sustainer of Prakriti, Upadrishta, Anumanta, cha Bharta, and experiencer is the Almighty Lord, Bhokta, Maheshwaraha, also known as the Supreme One Self, Paramatma iti cha api uktaha, the Supreme Soul seated in this body, Dehe asmin Purusha Parah. A lot of concepts are packed into this verse. This is the description of the state of Purushottama. I also want to tell you at this stage that in the Mahabharata, the character of Krishna is very interesting. Many years later, when the war is over and devastation has happened, Arjuna and Krishna are friends sitting near each other. Arjuna then tells Krishna, remember at Kurukshetra, that tremendous challenge I had to face and you helped me out. You taught me the Bhagavad Gita. He says, can I hear it once more from you? Very interesting. Then Krishna says, why? You've forgotten? Arjuna is a student like all of us, he won't remember everything. Have you forgotten? He says, I think I've forgotten, I don't. Then Krishna says, I'm sorry, I can never give it to you the way I gave it to you at the battlefield. He says, why? So at that moment, I was at the highest state of consciousness ever possible. Purushottama was in me. He says, this is a fantastic statement. Purushottama was in me, and whatever was said was the highest that ever could be said, and it can be said only once. But I still know what I said, because he's always at that high state, but not the highest. And because you're my good friend, and he also knows, I'm not saying it just to you, it's going to reach humanity. I'll give you a summary version of it, and that summary version is called Anugita. You can read the Mahabharata for that. But Krishna himself makes this confession that the Purushottama is the supreme highest state, not easily accessible. But there, not that I access, it accessed me. It's a descent of the highest state. It's possible for any one of us. Okay? But for an avatar, it's a natural state. For lesser mortals, it's a state you can evolve into because we've come from that state. So there are 4 roles given here, very interesting. Witness, consenter, sustainer, experiencer, Almighty Lord. Seated in the body. So this is the first clear description of the Dehi, the Supreme Divine, seated within. Seated in the body is a portion, Amsha, of the Supreme Divine Lord Ishvara. He is also known as a Supreme One Self in all, Paramatma, and as a Supreme Soul, Purushottama. So these words have strictly different meanings, but it's okay to treat them interchangeable for the time being. Soul, Self, and Lord. This portion of the Supreme Divine, Ishvara Amsha, performs 4 distinct roles. First, it is the quiet witness, Upadrishta. Another word for Upadrishta is Sakshi. Witnessing consciousness to all that is happening, not only outside but also within the individual in terms of movements in the physical, vital and mental realms. It simply watches everything, without interfering, while it clearly observes and knows. So this is something we are training in meditation to get into. You have to go all the way back till you get a completely impersonal and true perspective of what's happening. In the meditation course we are going through, it's called metacognitive introspective awareness. That means you can see the mind and the mind can see everything. But it's a completely neutral perspective. There's no ego at all. And you can see without being judgmental about anything that you see. There's no personal trait in it. So that's a very high state, Sakshi Bhava, which is possible for every one of us. And for many people it can be a default state. That means you can always see it. You never lose perspective. That's the first role. Second, it recognizes that being an Amsha of the Ishvara, it need not be a mute spectator, for it is empowered to withdraw, giving default sanction to the individual's participation in all that is happening. This role as consenter, Anumanta, which is taken for granted by Prakriti from the default status of the soul as Kshara Purusha, can be exercised by the divine indwelling Lord, the Antaryami, by a simple withdrawal of sanction, thereby arresting all action. This is a very powerful role which we normally don't use. Let's say you are in a bad situation and you're kind of lost in it, but you can do anything only with the sanction of the Purusha. The Kshara Purusha gives often default sanction. You take it for granted. You don't even ask it. That signature is always there. But the Purusha has the power to pull the plug. And when you pull the plug, there's no energy to do what you want to do. So how many of us can do that? You know there's something that your desires want you to badly do, but you know it's not the right thing to do. Or you can say no. You can withdraw the default sanction, pull the plug. That's the second role that's possible. That's called the consenter, Anumanta. Otherwise, this option is exercised only when it is deemed absolutely necessary. Otherwise, it generally upholds and sustains all that is done by Prakriti. This is the third role of the Ishvara Amsha, sustainer, Bharta. Bharta also means husband actually. So it's also sustainer, it gives the energy source unless it withdraws the consent. Sustainer. It sustains the mutable operation of Prakriti by providing the source of energy needed for this purpose. Finally, the fourth role of the indwelling Lord is cited as experiencer, Bhokta. It is the Ishvara Amsha who is a true and ultimate experiencer and enjoyer, and yet free of all the operations of Prakriti. All the actions of Prakriti through her multiple instruments are in fact a sacrifice, a yajna for the enjoyment of Ishvara. That Ishvara is not the ego. Ultimately it's a supreme divine which is enjoying everything. And an Amsha of that resides in our being. So to put it in a picture, these are the four roles: Upadrishta, Anumanta, Bharta, Bhokta, Maheshwara. So there are the higher levels. You have the transcendental level and you have the universal level. Well, this is the realm where Purushottama default operates, also called Paramatma. When you use the word Paramatma, you're referring to the self. When you're using the word Purusha, you're referring to the word soul. But here there's only one, not multiple souls. There's only one original divine source. And once it gets into manifestation, then these multiple souls come into play. Then there is the individual level, the Dehi. In the Dehi, we have another word which is used often in tradition. It's called Antaryami, which is an Ishvara Amsha, a part of the divine, a portion of the divine indwelling in the individual. And it is, in terms of self, we know that the word uses Jivatman. Jivatman presides over the individual self, Jiva plus Atman. And you can access it through your Antaratman inside. Antaratman is going on evolving. When it evolves fully, it becomes the Antaryami. But initially it's a spark. These are the 4 roles that are possible from this Antaryami. One is witness, Upadrashta or Sakshi. Second is consenter, Anumanta. Third is sustainer, Bharta. And the 4th is experiencer. Right? Is it clear? Very simple summary of what is shown here. Self-realization calls for knowledge of this impersonal aspect of the one self in all. Sri Aurobindo comments, that is the self-knowledge to which we have to accustom our mentality before we can truly know ourselves as an eternal portion of the eternal. Once that is fixed, no matter how the soul in us may comport itself outwardly in its transactions with nature, whatever it may seem to do or however it may seem to assume this or that figure of personality, an active force and embodied ego, it is in itself free, no longer bound to birth. When there is this discovery and realization of the divine indweller and the false notion of doership is entirely dispelled, then we willingly submit ourselves to whatever be the divine will of Ishvara. Our instrumentation is now available for the divine Shakti to operate directly through our being.